not smoking. Quite a few shops. Sure, an ugly.
That's not a cobra, is it?
It is a cobra.
That little one?
That little one is a little cobra.
Well, oh. You're tickling her under the chin.
Oh, yes, they like that.
Max, picture. He has a
Peter?
thanks for no thanks. Warm, actually.
You know, Tom, that looks like a muskie to me. Can't you?
A muskie.
Can you hold on to that muskie?
Where are you from? I know, but where?
Oh, okay, everybody, red
Oh, yeah.
group.
I grew up in
Here we
Wisconsin.
go.
Southeastern Wisconsin. Or
The name is actually a mixture of two different names from two different languages. Okay? The word Kom is an Arabic word which means the mound. And the word Ombo is a mispronunciation of the name of this settlement during the Greek period. It's called the city or the settlement of Ombos, mispronounced by the Greeks into Ombu. When the Arabs arrived to the place, most of the temple was covered up in sand. You can still see sand rising up on the sides up there. And a lot of it was covered in the sand. And so they called it the Mound of Ombo. Hence called Ombo, the name that is presently used. This is a unique temple. You won't see anything like this anywhere else in Egypt. Because it's actually two separate temples stuck together. Not just one temple. We already mentioned the 5 items that make up the complete temple in Egypt. But if you draw a line right down in the middle of this temple, you get 5 on either side. So you get all parts on either side. Repeat. 2 complete temples, one next to the other. The reason for that is that during the Greek period, though there was a temple standing here before the Greek time, but it was in a very bad state, Ptolemy II, as a way of trying to convince the Egyptians that the Greeks had not come to destroy the religion or the beliefs of the people, he decided to order the rebuilding of temples. يا جماعة لو سمحتوا بعد إذنكم الصوت عالي جدا مش قادر أتكلم حتى لو سمحت. شكرا.
You tell them.
kids.
Egyptians. Kids, not kids. Okay? So Ptolemy II ordered the rebuilding of the temple. But then there were 2 groups of people that live in the settlement. One group that worshipped Sobek, the crocodile-headed god, and another group that worshipped Heroiris, or Herweret, Horus the Elder, a falcon-headed god. And the 2 groups didn't really like each other too much. So they fought against each other quite a lot. For the Greeks to try and build 2 separate temples was very difficult. So they decided to combine the 2 cults in the same place, in the same temple, by building these joined temples. At the same time, they want to make sure that both groups of people would respect and worship in both parts of the temple. So they interchange the positions of the gods. Now, although this is Sobek's side of the temple, and you can see a figure of Sobek right up here, you find there is a falcon god represented opposite on the other side. Okay? And on the other side of the temple, there is a big scene of Heroiris, Heroiris' side, but then there is a figure of Sobek represented right opposite. So they interchange the gods in different parts of the temple so that people from both groups will have to respect and worship in both parts of the temple. They also went a step further by wife swapping. That's why it's commonly known as the Temple of the Swingers. They exchanged wives. Horus or Heroiris, the falcon, is usually married to Hathor the cow. Okay? And Sobek, the crocodile, is married to Sekhmet, the lioness. But at this temple, the falcon got the lioness and the crocodile got the cow. Okay? They swapped them around. Okay? The 2 most impressive scenes are the ones on the inside of the entrance, either side of the doorway as you come in. This is one of them right there, showing the king coming towards the temple, led by 2 goddesses. Led by the 2 goddesses, to be more exact. Wadjet and Nekhbet. These are the protectress goddesses of Egypt in the north and south of Egypt before the unity. And each wearing its significant crown. This is the goddess of the south, Nekhbet wearing the crown of the south, and the goddess of the north wearing the crown of the north. But then they're presenting the king with the 2 crowns of Egypt, saying that both north and south accept him as being the ruler. And they're giving him the double crown of Egypt. Then they are leading him to meet the god Sobek, the crocodile, the major god of this side of the temple, who's followed by his wife on this side of the temple, or the temple, in this case, which is the goddess Hathor. Okay? Now I'd like you all to stand and try and stand in the same way that the king is standing. Try to stand up like the king. Okay? Just facing that way. Right leg forward. Right leg for the other right. That's it.
And then turn your body this way.
Yeah.
The shoulder is in frontal.
Yeah.
The head is in profile again. Then look at the hands. He's got two right hands. Okay? This is a very common mistake in all the figures of the ancient Egyptians. Throughout the history, not just Greco-Roman, even in Pharaonic. To the ancient Egyptians, it was the writing that's the most important. The drawing or the carving is only to illustrate what's written down. But the writing was more important than the figures. The figure was just a way of showing the side of the action, who is more important of the gods in size. The size of the gods will be bigger than the rest of the people, or the kings will be bigger than the commoners, and so on. Okay? And it also shows the direction. The idea of the shoulders, the frontal shoulders, is trying to show, to say, we even still use the expression nowadays, somebody who's broad-shouldered, as an expression of his strength and power, and of course to show the muscles of the arm, and so on. The two right hands is a common mistake, moving from a three-dimensional carving or a figure to a two-dimensional representation on a wall. But it only appears when they have their hands hanging beside their bodies like this. If he's actually doing something with his hands, or he's just holding something in his hands, then you don't see this problem. Okay? It only shows when the hands are there, empty, hanging to the sides.
Why is the woman always half on the side? The man always broad-shouldered. The woman is always.
The woman is almost, the shoulder is almost profile. Right? The ibis-headed, the record keeper of the gods, and Horus, all blessing and presenting the king, and you see the goddess Sekhmet is holding the key of life, the symbol of life in her hand, and it's almost as if she's feeding it to the king. Okay, this is the representation of the gods giving life to the kings, by giving them this key of life, through their noses sometimes, where they sniff it, or through the mouth. And then they're leading him, of course, to meet the god Horus, or Her-Weret, okay, who is the major god of this side of the temple. Right? One of those two falcon gods is Horus, the other one is Her-Weret. Her-Weret is the uncle of Horus, but Her-Weret is a local god, only of the south of Egypt. In fact, bless you, of Kom-Ombo, and that's why you see him only wearing the crown of the south. Whereas Horus, who is the major god of Egypt as a whole, is represented wearing the two crowns, north and south together. That's how you can usually tell a difference. But as I mentioned, I think I mentioned this briefly before, Horus has 42 different forms. There are 42 different representations and forms of the god Horus. Okay? But then there is a crocodile on the other side, the figure of Sobek, just like they did on the other end of the temple. Over his enemies by this representation, and following Ptolemy VI, we have two of the Cleopatras, Cleopatra II and Cleopatra III. The famous Cleopatra that everybody talks about is Cleopatra the Seventh. Okay, Cleopatra the Seventh, and she is the last of the Ptolemies of Egypt.